All right, up to now we have created a storyboard that has a split view controller with, on the master side, we have a nav view controller at the start. Then we've got our volumes view controller, our books view controller, our chapter list view controller. Both the books and the chapter list view controller have segues that take us to this scriptures view controller. And that's on the master side. Then on the detail side, we have this scene that's going to hold our map view controller. But let's go embed that scene in a nav controller. There we go. And now we have a title bar that we can manipulate. Okay, let's do a little bit more reorganization. So a couple of things. One, on the model side, I have these three classes, book, geoplace, and scripture, that are really pretty simple. They're just mapping the fields in a database table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a subgroup. I'm going to select these three, and I'm going to say new group from selection. And now it's put those into this new group that I'm going to call table. Okay, because those just map tables to objects or to classes. And now let's see, the other thing is the scripture renderer that I've tucked away in HTML. I really feel like that's more of a model thing. I'm going to put it up here in the model class side by side with GeoDatabase. And what I'm going to want to do here in this video, I'm going to want to, there's one public helper on this class scripture renderer, HTML for book ID. So if I hand it a book ID and a chapter, it will hand me back a string that is the HTML for that page, along with an array of the geoplaces that have been encoded for places in this particular chapter. So we'll use that in our scriptures view controller to display some HTML now. Another warning I've got going on here is it says prototype table cells must have reuse identifiers. And so let's go fix the main storyboard to get rid of that warning. So when I dragged out a table view controller here, I did not give that, okay, let's zoom in. It's not zooming in, try plus. I did not give that prototype cell, okay, let's make sure in the document outline I've selected it. Yeah, there we go. I did not give that cell a reuse identifier, and recall we want it to be basic. And I'm going to call this one the chapter cell. And let's verify that this one has a reuse identifier. Yeah, book cell and volume cell. Oh, one thing that I didn't do before, while I'm here and thinking about it, let's go to the size inspector on this volumes view controller. And I'm not going to go with the default height. I want to make it a little bit bigger, so I'm going to change it to custom. And we're going to go 55 instead of 44. Just give a little bit more vertical space. And because there are only 5 volumes, that's okay to do, at least on this first one. And you can decide later if you want to do something similar for the books and the chapter list view controllers. Okay, now our objective is to display a web view over here. Now I can go drag a web view. If I type web here, I want not the deprecated UI web view, but the new WKWebView. I can drag that onto my scene over here. And let's use this menu down here to add constraints of 0, 0, 0, 0, all 4 of those, pin it to the edges. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to make an outlet to that web view. Now, there's a problem here. If I build my project, it should complain about the fact that it can't find the WebKit framework. I know on the MapKit framework it crashes, but apparently the build succeeds, but at runtime it would fail if I tried to pull up that scene. Because I need to go into my project, into build phases here, link binary with libraries, and I need to say, hey, I want to use the WebKit framework, please. Now, let's go make a custom view controller for that scene. Let's call it the scriptures view controller. So new file, scriptures view controller. And let's put it in alphabetical order in its controller folder there. Okay, we're going to want to import UI kit. We're going to be class scriptures view controller, and we just need to inherit from UI view controller. And what we want to do now is in the view.did_load, we'll call our super view.did_load first, but what we want to do is we want to get our web view and we want to load it with HTML. Load some HTML into the web view. So we need an outlet to the web view. So back to our main storyboard, let's make sure that that view controller has an identity of scriptures view controller. There it is. And now let's recompile. And I want to go to the assistant editor here. Automatic. Why is it? Oops. Okay. It's just being slow here. Hang on. All right. So I want to go to automatic, and this is the scriptures view controller. Very good. And I'm going to control drag from my web view over here to say I have a web view. Hit return. Okay, so there's my outlet, and what's it complaining about? Do you remember? Here, let's go back to the standard editor view. Undeclared type WKWebView. I have to import that. So import WebKit. There we go. And now I can do whatever loading. So I can say WebView dot, and there will be some load HTML. There it is, load HTML, and I'm going to give it some string. And the URL, base URL is nil. I don't need a base URL. And I can just put hello world or whatever. And now we run this thing. Oh, wait, I need to be able to navigate to it. Okay, so before we go any further, let's see. Back on our main storyboard, see, we have two paths to get to the scriptures view controller. If I'm looking at the books and I click on, say, title page to the Book of Mormon, there are no chapters, so I really ought to bypass the chapters. I ought to go straight into the scriptures view controller here. I ought to take this segue, which is called show chapter content. So let me copy that text, and let's go to our books view controller, and let's add a static let show scriptures segue identifier. And now I need a delegate. Let's see, this is table view data source, and let's now go table view delegate. Okay, so that's the did select row at index path. Let's see, I need that override keyword. Okay, so when we did select row at index path, let's perform segue with identifier, storyboard dot, that one that we just put in there. And I don't care who the sender is, I'll just say self. And now, when I click on one of those books, it'll take me to the scriptures view controller. Now we can run it. So up comes our iPhone 8 Plus, and we go Old Testament, Genesis, and well, there's our hello world. It's sure tiny. So I can zoom by pinching. Okay, really what I need to do is I need to set up a meta tag, a viewport meta tag, and tell it to turn off scaling and make it the scale that I'd really like it to be. Not that tiny, tiny text. All right, so back to the scriptures view controller then. So what do? Well, we use our scripture renderer. Now the model for this view controller ought to be something like this. I need a book ID and I need a chapter ID. So I'm just going to say book ID 101, which is Genesis, not view var. And I'm going to say var chapter equal to Genesis 2, because that has some geocoded places in it. It has Euphrates and Assyria. Now, if okay, so on that helper, scripture renderer, right up there. Let's go use that scripture renderer helper. Now, inside of scripture renderer, this is a singleton, so I'm going to call shared renderer. That gives me the singleton instance, and on that, I'm going to call HTML for book ID. Pass in the book ID that I have here and chapter that has been given. And now, instead of just loading an arbitrary string, except I have to assign something to that. Okay, let's command click on that. Command click takes me to this. It is returning two things: a tuple with a string, which is the HTML that has been rendered for that book and chapter, and then an array of encoded geoplaces that I'll need later when I'm making pins on my map. I don't need them now, but I will later. So let some tuple equal that, and I'm going to say HTML, comma, and I don't care about the second one for now. So now I can load that HTML into my web view. And let's see what happens. Do we get Genesis 2? So Old Testament, Genesis, Sure enough, there's Genesis 2, and it has all the HTML bits that we need. Okay, that's enough for this video. We've reorganized our project a bit. We've added a WKWebView into the Scriptures view controller scene, and we're able to at least start doing some rendering of content there.